Hey, guys, how are you? I'm super excited about the guest we are about to meet. His name is Vince Kramer, and I was fascinated by his content, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about him and his work. He has extensive work that and research in regard to so many of the things that I am passionate about the miraculous. I believe in the miraculous, and I believe that most of us are not living our ideal life that we're called to, our purpose. So that is so much of my passion. So I'm going to give you a bio in regard to Vince so you can understand his background to the degree that we can, because it's so extensive. Vince Kramer, as an airline pilot, military veteran, transformational trainer and mentor, and clear conscious channel, brings a unique experience to the world of transformation and purpose-driven growth. His past experience in a stereotypically macho field brings a more integrated perspective to the softer field of personal growth that's not often seen. That's one of the things that's really drawn me into this guest. As a speaker, teacher, guide, and best-selling author of Mastering the Art of Success with Jack Canfield, whom I love, Jack Canfield, Vince's distinct combination of experience, education, and research helps him develop powerful talks, workshops, and online training in finding happiness and success by living life by design. Which, is that not badass or not? So I want to read a little bit more about him because I found so much of this interesting. When I look up about Vince, it says, like you, transformation and human potential expert. So what he is, he's a transformation and human potential expert. And isn't that what we're all about here at Alison Answers? Like, what is your human potential? Vince Kramer has seen personal growth training take many different forms over the 3 decades. And that is so true. No matter the form, people want results and support. It is Vince's passion to partner with individuals, parents, and groups in finding lasting empowerment, purpose, and passion in creating businesses, relationships, and lives that they are creating by design. So the thing about him is that I think that he's really going to hit some really incredible target points for all of us. And I'm really looking forward to growing myself. Vince and his wife, Mary, founded Imagine Miracles, which guides people of all walks of life how to discover, design, and create their miracle life. Vince and Mary are also the founding members of a membership community, Imagination Miracles. He is the host of a weekly podcast, The Miracle You. Vince wrote and produced the Miracle Life Method, online training programs and associated workshops based on your unique purpose formula and the CREATE model. He is just somebody that I'm just so interested in learning from and growing with you guys together. So I'm going to try and ask the questions that I believe that you guys want to know. I mean, don't we all want to create the miraculous life? So here we go. Put on your seatbelts. I'm so looking forward to this. Hey, guys, how are you today? It is Alison from Alison Answers and Lager Counseling Services. As you know from the bio, we have Vince Kramer here, who, as I shared, I'm really super excited to have him because I just feel so aligned with him and his wife Mary's mission, and it just seems to be who they are as people and what they're looking to do collectively to really help people to find their true purpose and create the life they want. And that is just everything that I want to do. So I'm just so grateful to have you, Vince, here. Welcome.
Well, I am so excited to be here. And, it's interesting that we always seem to attract at the right time, the right people. And it was a long journey for me to realize that people who have the same divine intents that like you and Mary and
Yeah.
I have together, it's important for us to come together. It's not a competition. It's us helping the world really discover and live their purpose. And that's so powerful.
I love that you said that, because what I'm finding now on the podcast, that this is all the type of people that we're all like coming together. And I agree with you. It's like I feel like God, source, whatever, is raising the collective consciousness of this beautiful connection. So I'm loving every minute of it, and I agree with you. So there's so many things about the work that you do that I want to know about, and I know that the audience does. So, like, for example, you talk, maybe you could explain how you, I know you've been at this personal development walk and you've seen, all the different things that we've all seen, right? That, and how you've developed research and studied how to find your true purpose and to create the miraculous in your life. Could you explain to us like a little of your backstory?
Yes. Maybe it would be best for me to start with the interesting thing I learned is that our life has been on purpose from before we were born. And because we were on purpose, everything that we've created or co-created, I fully believe we all need to take responsibility for every circumstance in our lives. Everything that we've created along the way is taking us to live our purpose more fully and more fully and more fully. So when you asked, you know, to develop programs, to coach, to whatever, every single thing that's come into my life that I have finally chosen, sometimes I've ignored it for a while, but everything that I've finally chosen was something that helped me develop my gifts and talents more and more for what I do. So my job in the military, teaching people how to fly airplanes and to coach and to mentor all the younger officers and all the enlisted people that I worked with, all helped me be a better and better coach. My job at United Airlines, first of all, being a pilot and dealing with the public in a place where they don't feel safe. I
Yes.
learned how to help people really feel safe.
Wow.
And when you're doing your purpose work, when you're looking at how we navigate the 3D world, we have to look at our subpersonalities. We have to look at some really deep beliefs. And people are afraid to step into looking at their subpersonalities if they don't feel safe. And
Yes.
I learned how to do that in my airline career. So every single thing that's happened is just helping me be better and better at my divine intent.
So
So that's kind
beautiful.
of an overall of that's how I got here.
Yes. I have two questions in relationship to that. And I'm going to, one is about the military. I'm going to put that on the shelf because I don't want to forget that. But the thing, when you say sub personalities, could you explain, what that means when you say sub
Certainly.
personalities?
Oh, I would love
Mhm.
to. That's one of my favorite things. So I love spirituality and I love science. I listened to several of your podcasts about science and spirituality. I just love what you've shared. And what I've learned is that we are truly multidimensional. And it's great that we want to move into a higher dimension, hold the higher vibrations of who we are. But we have to realize that we're still living in the 3D world. And we chose to live in the 3D world because that's where expansion happens, the third dimension and the fourth dimension. And that's our job, right? We're here to help the universe expand. So if that expansion happens in the third and fourth dimension, then we have to fully live in this dimension. And we developed a personality to live here. It's our operating system. It's how we deal with people. It's how we deal with life. But there were times along the way that we didn't know how to deal with what was in front of us. And we formed a sub personality to deal with it.
Love it.
And that sub personality was there just to protect us from that circumstance or any circumstance that looks like it.
Yes.
So that's why we have these times where things pop up for us where we're just kind of out of control for a little while because
Hmm.
that sub personality is trying to protect us. That's where our multiple personality disorders come from, these sub personalities that we've developed. And sometimes they get so strong that they step out in front and they're leading the charge instead of our
Mhm.
main personality. So it's some of my favorite work because for us to fully live our purpose, we don't need to get rid of these subpersonalities like so many people have shared.
Yeah.
We need to learn where they came from, treat them who they are at the age they were developed because they never get any older than that,
Yes.
and then become partners with them in fully living our lives.
Yes. I love that because, so much of what you're describing, we've seen that progress throughout, people talk about inner child work or, these core beliefs, and I'm hearing what you're saying. I love the way you're putting it. It's just such a great way of putting it because I know like in times of tragedy for me, right? Like we scramble and we become something like, tell me if this is an example of it, okay?
Okay.
And
Mhm.
correct me if I'm wrong. So, I know that I was born, like, with this very, like, animated personality, like, a really, like, energetic, like, I just know that about me, entertaining, kinda silly girl, goofy girl, right? But I think that, like, let's say that's the part that that's, like, me, maybe my higher self. But then what morphed out of that was people pleasing, being the one who would change the room. The in terms of like, I'm going to be happy so that because I need to manipulate myself in order to control how you see me, that kind of a thing. Like, I'm going to be entertaining so you like me as opposed to just being me. Is
Mhm.
it something like that? Is that what you're talking
I
about?
would say it could be. There could be two
Mhm.
different ways we could look at that
Yeah.
because we all learn to put on certain masks
Yeah.
for people to accept us the way we want them to accept us. So
Yes.
it could be a mask. But let's say that as a young girl, your experience of being funny and being out there and being lively was something that most people liked. But when your dad came home at the
Oh
end
yeah.
of the day,
Mhm.
that he was tired, he was doing the best that he could, but he would say, Allison, I don't want to hear anything you have to say. And that happened over and over. And then there was a part of you that all of a sudden just started lashing out at him because he hurt you in saying, I don't want to hear what you have to say. And you didn't know how to deal with that. Then you might have developed a personality that protected you from that. And that was a personality that was mean and ugly and
Mm,
lashed out.
got it.
That's how a subpersonality shows up. People who have had sexual abuse,
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
form some personalities like that. Um, I've I formed a personality around my grandfather because no matter what I did, it was never good enough for him.
Yeah.
And in that process, what happened was I just started when all I had to do is be around him and he say something about, well, you could, and that sub personality would jump out and just want to fight him from day one. And that's not who I really was.
Yeah.
It was that personality that didn't want me to walk away from him crying because he hurt me because I wasn't good enough.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's I'm sure everyone listening is hearing their own heart and the parts of them that relate to this. And what I'm thinking is how I would imagine myself. I was sexually abused. I have, trauma and neglect in my childhood or whatever. I mean, I openly talk about it, but and I did develop, but one of the things I saw, and it's interesting to me because this is cool. I'm seeing like, let's say at whatever age, I mean, this isn't really related to me, but let's say at age 4, you're crying and crying and crying and no one comes and like you're just like learned helplessness, right? So then you just shut down that part of you that now it's always inside crying, right? So like I feel like I abandoned so many parts of myself, right? And part of the healing was going back and retrieving me. Is that kind of what you're talking about, just going back and like connecting? And is is that part of it, or like
Yes, I don't delve into the world of the world that you're in with
no, it's yeah, it's a
psychotherapy and stuff.
yeah.
It's for me, it's our brain, as you know, the frontal lobe doesn't start developing till about 7 years old. It's not fully developed till 27, 28, somewhere around in there. And what I found was that nobody told us our beliefs weren't real.
Yeah.
Nobody told us that most of the way that we operate, especially where those subpersonalities are triggered, come from the perceptions of a child who had no way of reasoning what was going on in front of them.
Right. Mhm.
So what I like to see with us working with the subpersonality is, well, where's the first time that subpersonality came up?
Yeah.
And what was it protecting you from?
Yeah. Mhm.
And then when I'm working with our year-long clients, especially, it's okay, now where is that trigger bringing that personality up in your life right now?
Yeah. Mhm.
All right, so the trigger came up where you were first so afraid that you needed this personality. Was your perception at the time the same perception that you would have right now?
Mm. Mhm.
And if you can say, no, I don't want to be that way. That's not who I am. I don't need this protection. Now, when the trigger comes in your day to day life,
Yes.
start talking to yourself, start talking to that energy. The subpersonality is an energy of its own.
Yeah.
Start talking to that energy and say, look, I had it handled. We're still safe. We're
Mm.
not dying. The lion or tiger is not coming to get us. And after a while, you start taking away the little voices in your head that get you to get out of the way so it can protect you.
Yeah, and isn't it amazing how, like, I'll even see with myself, just like a feeling or a behavior will it just keeps you'll think it's gone. And then it's like, oh my God, like I have so much to do. I'm going to die. Like that this is what, like, I will never make it through this day, because and then like I guess my higher self will be like, whatever you're that feeling of being out of control in like a house that's in a shambles is not happening now. Like, is it like that? Like, I like
Yes.
to
Mhm.
comfort, like to say, no, what is actually happening now? Like, like whatever was happening then is not happening now, right?
Yes,
And
it's
similar?
just truly stepping into
Yeah.
that reasoning part of our brain,
Yeah.
the part of us that our conscious brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to answer that question, it's really understanding exactly that. Look, the trigger of the past, the perception of the child, there's nothing wrong with what the child perceived. They were scared at the time.
Yeah.
That part of me was scared. It's perfectly fine. And thank you so much for protecting me. But right now, I don't need protected from somebody who might talk to me in a cross way. And what
Yes.
happened was, as I did my work, I got certified in a thing called voice dialogue.
Mm.
And the reason I really liked the voice dialogue was because we could talk to the subpersonalities, but we could also talk to our higher self. We could talk to our guides, which was extremely helpful in the work that we do, because I believe everybody can tap into that guidance at a level that we can't even imagine. And I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Oh, yes, please. You
But
got it. Yeah.
as what I learned from the subpersonalities is they just don't want to be annihilated. They just don't want to be done away with. And I've found in helping people get to know their subpersonalities that after a while, they just take on a new job. It's the same kind of protection mechanism, but they take on a new job.
That is so sweet. I love that. Like, I mean, I don't know if you have an example. I don't know why. I just thought that was so sweet. Like them taking on another job, like they're not getting abandoned or they have, yeah. So what would
So,
that
so
be?
I
Love
had
that.
I had a subpersonality, and this subpersonality came from uh, the influence my mother had in my life. So the subpersonality, uh, never trusted anyone. Anybody that came in my life, if even if I just was attracted to them and I really liked them, that subpersonality, don't trust them until they show you they can be trusted. What look, they're doing that. Look, they're doing that. The voice in the head.
Yes, yes, I
And
know it.
so that subpersonality, I really had to start working with because there was so many people that came in my life that they weren't going to hurt me. They weren't even going to get close enough, but there was a reason that we came together. And
Yes.
I needed to find it, and I didn't need all the voices in my head. So as I did the person that subpersonality work that we help people with, that subpersonality, I actually had to negotiate with it. And I said, look, I understand. And I know people are saying, well, this guy's crazy. So we need to tell my full story so they really see where
Yeah,
I
we
came
could.
from. But
Yeah, I would love to hear your story. But yeah. Mhm.
so I this personality started saying, okay, I'm still not going to trust people. But how about I just tell you I don't trust them and I don't try to stop you from getting to know them?
Yeah.
And it became this personality actually gave itself a title. It's my executive assistant. I don't let anybody through the door until you know how I feel about them.
Okay. Yes.
And now it's still there. I still hear, okay, did you see this? Did you see that? But
Mm.
it's not constantly looking for some reason for me to not trust that person.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to give a backstory, or is that something we didn't discuss that? I don't know if I should ask that question.
Well, the story of me awakening
Yeah.
is really huge. So I started out with my grandfather having all this influence on me. First, when I was 5 years old, I told my grandmother that I was here to help people love themselves so they would love others. So that was
Wow.
my knowing as a 5-year-old what my purpose was. And then at the same time, I would lay in the grass, look up in the sky, watch the airplanes fly over, and want to be a pilot. So those are the things that my little 5-year-old, 6-year-old knew. And then about 7 years old, a couple things happened. And the biggest one was my grandfather thought it was time for me to start learning how to be a man by
Mm,
his rules.
mm,
And I hated him for it
mm.
until I realized he was doing the best could and he wanted me to be successful. But I was in my late 20s before I figured it out.
Yeah.
But I started following his rules. And in following his rules, I became very competitive. Um, Good was never good enough. Great was never good enough. I was always competing against someone else. And then somewhere along the way, I started competing against myself, which was a never win.
Yes.
I could never win because I was never going to be better than me. And
Yes.
I would have to try to be better than
Mhm.
me. So I got into this place of believing the rules of society is where I was going to be happy.
Mm.
If I was really good, it wasn't about having money and things. It was if I was really good at that job, if this person really liked me, if I could accomplish this or be here or be there. And I was extremely successful through all of that, Allison.
Mm.
But there was always something missing in my life, and I could never figure out what it was.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit before we got started recording about wake up calls. Well, I had three really big ones.
Mm.
9/11.
Mm.
And 9/11 was a wake up call for everybody that was alive.
Yeah.
But I was a United airline pilot.
Wow.
My friend died in Pennsylvania.
Oh,
I flew flight 93 1 week prior. So if it would have been 9/4 instead of 9/11, I probably would have been in that smoking hole in Pennsylvania. But my grandfather taught me so well
mm.
that that would never happen to me. Boom, just press on.
Mm.
So the universe, my higher self, delivered. United Airlines went bankrupt in 2003.
Mm.
I lost all of my pension. I lost 60% of my pay. I held on to my job, but I wasn't doing the same job that I was doing before. I got demoted in the airplanes type of thing. And I went out and bought some pretzel stores because my father told me it was my job to support my family and I had to have a good retirement. So I went out, bought some pretzel stores. That was going to be my retirement. That was my answer to things. I didn't pay attention to, Vince, you want to live your life differently. I didn't pay attention to that. I paid attention to what my dad taught me. So I bought these stores. Within a month of having these stores, my wife came to me, not Mary, my ex-wife, came to me at the time and said, I just can't do this. I can't work with these young people. I just can't do this. So she left me with 3 pretzel stores and a full-time job.
Wow.
And I learned very well. Okay, do it yourself, get it done. So I was working 95-hour weeks through all of that, trying to make it happen. And at the same time, Dr. Atkins decides carbs are bad for us. So now the pretzel stores are taking a spin
Oh my
down.
God.
And what ended up happening, because I didn't pay attention to that wake up call, it got a little bit bigger. And while I was working those stores and doing my full-time job, my wife ended up having an affair.
Mm.
And the divorce was what finally woke me up to look for what was missing. And wake up calls aren't all negative, everybody. There's really positive wake up calls. And the big positive wake up call was Mary coming into my life. And I had met her 10 years earlier and felt this really weird attraction and didn't know why, but we were both divorcing at the same time. And she woke me up to remembering that I told my grandmother that I wanted to help people love themselves so they could love others. And that was the journey for me to get to that wake up.
I'm just flipping out right now because that is incredible. And I hear so many little alignments with the things that you're saying. So I'm like, which one do I talk about? But I just want to say this one little thing about when you were 5 years old and you knew that you wanted to teach people how to love themselves. So that, could you just say it again? Because it's so powerful.
To help people love themselves so they could love others.
Yes. So I just recently was like, uh, God, what is my purpose? So now I'm doing all these things that I do. I run counseling centers, I have all the stuff I'm doing, right? But everybody think that's your purpose. And I'm like, what's my purpose? Like an existential crisis thing, you know? And all I heard is to know your lovability and then show others theirs. That's it. And I'm like, and everything felt right in my world when I heard that. So it sounds so like similar to, because then I'm thinking all I have to do is, because in order for me to show others theirs, I feel like I have to know mine, right? I don't know if you agree with that.
100%.
Yeah. And like that loving ourselves isn't a sin, like we're taught. But
Loving ourselves is a necessity.
it's not possible to be able, nothing works without that, right?
You can't
Yes.
love, you cannot love anyone else until you love yourself fully.
Yes. Yes. That's my track. But
Mhm.
so I loved hearing what you said. I thought it was so beautiful. But there's this thing that you said, and I read it and I just wanted to address it. When you're saying being in these male, like macho types of roles and marrying those two, bringing that into personal growth, right? My late husband was in the military 21 years in the Navy, a CB. So I'm really familiar with that. And I love, and a lot of what I think about, I'm pretty sure I talk about it, but not a lot. But the idea of someone being a male, fully male, but also being like spiritually alive and like a kind alpha or whatever you'd want to say, right? So I'm just so curious about what you think of that, the connection between those two things.
Well, looking at it from the quantum physics part of everything,
Yes, yes,
there's
yes.
no separation.
Yes.
There's no separation in any of it. So
Yes.
it's all of it.
Yes.
And there are no mistakes or coincidences. You can't
Yes.
read that exactly in any quantum physics
Right.
book, but that's what it's saying.
Yes.
There's no mistakes or coincidences. So for me, I was in the military. I was a military officer to learn some things to help me live my purpose. Some of the things I learned was discipline,
Yes.
because for us to truly live in the 3D world, we have to master our mind.
Yes.
And to master our mind, we have to be disciplined enough to stay conscious.
Yes.
So I learned that.
That's
I
really cool.
learned how to work with a team. I
Mm.
learned how to speak in front of people.
Mm.
I
Yes.
learned how to actually teach, because I was teaching people who have never flown an airplane or maybe had 20 hours in an airplane how to fly complex military jets. So everything that I was doing there was helping me live my purpose. And that's the first thing I realized. And then, Alison, when I realized there's three parts to our purpose, it's the who, what, and why of us. It's not just the why like everybody thinks. And the why is what you uncovered. The why is the difference that you're here to make. And when I realized my why, I could go back to every single thing that I've done in my life, every job, every relationship, and saw how I was living that purpose there, how I was making that difference.
Yes.
And then I realized we're not looking for our purpose. We just have to realize that we have been living it, and we know there's more to living it. We know we're being called to more. And that's why we feel that need to find our purpose.
I love what you're describing. I kind of like intuitively understood, like when I was like a bartender or a waitress, or when I was like raising my kids, I was like, all of these things are culminating, in this, they all make sense, and one of the things I've been really seeing on a more like now, even though I understood it, now I feel like it's something more like, almost like any little interaction that doesn't go well, every experience, even if it's traumatic, because I've had really traumatic kinds of experiences, I see them as this like training ground. And I'm not just saying it, like, how like you'll apply it because it's true. Now I actually don't feel as impacted if somebody like is, whatever, leaving. Like I understand, oh, they had that little time there. And
Mhm.
maybe I learned quickly. I don't know what happened, but I'm seeing it like rapid fire. And it's just fascinating to me that all these things that we get angst about, I just want people to hear that, like what we get angst about, they're there for us. Like there really are. We hear that, but it's really, really true, right? I mean,
Yeah,
this is what,
and I think the most exciting thing is, and we do this in most of our programs, not all of them, but most of our programs, we call it finding the gift. And I know that's very cliche, but we actually coach people through and teach them how to do this themselves, to go back to the circumstance, whatever it was, and truly find what was developed out of the circumstance. Because as soon as you do that and you realize, oh, I learned that, or I met this person, or this happened, and oh, now look how far down my path I am now, you just changed your past.
if you knew what I read this morning, you wouldn't even believe it, because it's exactly what you're saying. And oh, okay, so my husband died by suicide in 21. No one would ever think that we could ever possibly be anything good about that. I run counseling centers in every single way. It is the most, I mean, I might cry, but I'm trying to explain it. It's exactly what you're talking about. So now moving through it, like day 3 with my kids, I was like, okay, we have to, we have to gain more than we lost. So I started writing down next to my bed what I learned that day, what I learned the next day, what I learned. And about a year and a half in, or I'm not sure when it was, it just came to me. It must have been like, something supernatural came or whatever and said, higher self, I don't know. I want you to write down, because we write our wins at work. So I want you to write down every win since that day. Now, that sounds like sacrilege. It sounds like, how could you do that? It doesn't go along with culture, but I'm like, I'm doing it. For me, I'm just doing it because I need
Mhm.
to know. The list was what I learned, what's changed, how I've grown. I'm not that, I grew so much through this fire of like walking through the rubble. And it's just incredible. And do you mean that? Is that kind of what you mean? Like,
Exactly.
yeah,
It's exactly what I mean. And I think I never would have said this before I was 50 years old and had my wake up, but
yeah,
I truly believe that these people have this contract with us. We have this spiritual contract that I'm going to leave you at this time, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to be more of who you are. I got you here. Our spiritual agreement, our soul contract, we fulfilled it. And when we fulfilled it, it's going to be time for me to leave. And I never would have said that a long time ago. I would have told you that was a bunch of malarkey.
yes,
But I have spent so much time with so many people, and we can see when that relationship got you to this place, and now it's time for the relationship to be over. The relationship with my first wife, I was in so much pain, and I didn't like her very much because of the divorce, and only because it hurt me. No other reason.
right.
It just
Yes.
hurt me so badly. But I realized that in the relationship that I was in, I would never be here right now. I would never be channeling the masters. I would never be delivering the message that I'm here to deliver if it wasn't time for our contract to be up.
Mm. Isn't it incredible?
Mhm.
It's very moving. When you talk about a quantum leap, I hope I'm not making a quantum leap from what we're talking about, because I feel like it's tied together. But if it's not, you could just tell me no. But I really wanted to talk to you about that because I believe in that so much. Like that, I'm trying to remember this book, but what's the name of it? It's something you too, I think, but he talks about the quantum leap. And I just would love to hear your take on it and how it applies to us. How do we take that quantum leap to our purpose? Or I'm not sure. I want to hear how you explain it.
Well, a quantum leap is truly a transformation.
Yes.
And the difference between a change and a transformation is just all the trials and tribulations
Yeah.
of figuring out what's this next step, or what do I need to fix. So a quantum leap, I mean, a quantum leap is moving from where you are right now to where you want to be
Yeah.
with without any of the stuff in between. That's
Yeah.
that's truly what a quantum leap is.
Yeah.
That's
The miraculous, right?
scientifically, that's what the electrons do.
Yes.
I'm here in this moment and I'm clear over there in the next moment, and it didn't take me anything to get there. So when we talk about taking a quantum leap, the program that we call Take a Quantum Leap is to quantum leap into awareness. So to start where you are right now, experience what we share with you in 7 weeks, and take a quantum leap in awareness to realize that I brought a blueprint in with me. And that blueprint is the 3 parts of my purpose. And now I can start living from that blueprint instead of living from the rules that I have been living
Yes.
from before.
Yes.
So when I say the difference between change and transformation, a transformation is deciding where you want to be and living from that place. And I'm
Yes.
not saying fake it till you make it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying truly living from that place where
Yes.
change, okay, well, what am I doing wrong? Where do I want to go? What steps do I need to take to get there? And we go through all of this energetic shifts of higher vibration, lower vibration as we succeed, as we fail, as we find there's another step. And we truly don't need to do that. Science tells us that, spirituality tells us that we can truly choose the life we want and step into that place. And then, Allison, it goes back to what I shared before. Now you know you can make that quantum leap, but to stay there, you need to learn the things that you need to do in the 3D world to navigate what's going to try to pull you back to that old space.
Yeah. Could you describe that? Could you tell us more about that? Is that related to the discipline you were describing before, or is it something is it?
Yes, it's
Hmm.
part of mastering the mind, like I
Hmm.
shared with before. And it's really, and I don't want to seem cliche about this because um, everybody does belief work.
There's nothing about you that's cliche, by the way.
Oh,
So
thank you.
you could just forget about
I can
that.
forget about talking
Right.
about that. I got you.
You're not.
But everybody does belief work. There's people out there that help you with subpersonality work.
Hmm.
It's really understanding where the automatic is in us,
Hmm.
where the conscious is, where the unconscious or the subconscious is. And once again, the subconscious or the unconscious isn't a bad thing. We couldn't even raise our arm without the subconscious.
Yes.
But it's, can we reprogram it from the adult mind?
Yes.
Can we go back and, if this is kind of doing inner child work, really, can we go back as an adult and say, oh my gosh, I understood why I perceived my mom acting that way as X. I understand why. But now that I'm looking at it, it doesn't make any sense.
No.
So why am I still making all my decisions around my mom
Hmm.
or women that act like my mom
Yes.
based on that perception of that child?
Mm.
Now you're honoring the little you, but at the same time, you're taking control of the mind and saying, no, we don't need to go back and pull that old pattern.
Yes, yes. And and so much of this, isn't it, awake, like we're describing awakening, right? But it's all just truth. Just because most of us do not take the time to stop and to understand or hear that that's that little child and the meaning that they've attached to their experience. Like most people are just living this automated program, right? So like it's the time to stop and look. That's what you're doing with people. Let's stop and look, right? And that to me is, it all ties into like just being in the now, right? And just, and like slow is the new fast, small is the new big. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
these little like when you this quantum leap we're describing, right? Like what I'm noticing is that the more awareness, these little moments of awareness. I think you said what did you say? Those moments that turn into, you said like a sentence about that. What was it?
I don't
I don't
remember.
remember. I don't either,
I
but
don't
it was
remember,
good. It was cool. It
but
was a
the
good
book does
statement.
say awakening through moments of choice, and
That's
there
it.
are so
Yes.
many little moments of choice.
All those little baby little things that accumulate, that exponentially become. And do you find that we move more quickly out of situations that maybe are negative because we're learning more quickly because we're more aware? Do you see that?
Well, I think there's several things happening there. One, the shift of energy of the planet
Oh yeah.
is really keeping us moving faster. I mean, look at the creation that's happening in the world. And that's not because, in my opinion, technology is getting better, but it's not because of technology. It's not because of the computer world. It's because as a collective, we're moving higher into vibration,
Yes.
closer and closer to a vibration that supports more growth, more expansion, more around us. So I think that's part of it. And then I think the other thing is that you mentioned our higher selves so much in our talk here. My belief of our higher self is just the non-physical part of us,
Yeah.
that part of us that hasn't taken on the slower vibration of the physical body,
Yes.
and it hasn't forgotten. And I think that our higher self is constantly moving us faster and faster to stay on pace with this change of the collective vibration,
Mm.
because there's major things coming to us in the world,
Yeah.
in shifts of energy. And the people that are listening to this, you, Mary, myself, we're meant to help people through that change that's coming. So we have to keep up with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the
I
higher
feel
self is
that.
saying, move on.
I
And we're
feel
starting to listen to it more.
yes. Yes. Yeah, I really feel that. It's good to talk to other people so that we're understanding like what's happening because it could feel a little ah, like
Mm.
manic spirituality or
Mhm.
something. I would love to hear about channeling and what you guys do. I would love to hear about that.
Well, the channeling, let me share the build-up story, because
Sure.
I think it will be really good for the people who um, aren't quite sure about channeling, or is it real?
Yes.
What's going on? So when I said that Mary was part of my wake-up call, for sure, one of the things that happened when I got the divorce, I started out on a journey to find out what was missing through all those times in my life where I had everything, but I felt like I gotta get the next thing because it's not quite fulfilling.
Yeah.
And when I started out on that journey, I finally realized through one of my mentors, Jack Canfield.
I love him.
He did a meditation, and it's in the book. It talks about the meditation that we did, and I realized when I woke up from that meditation, woke up, I truly woke up from that meditation, for
Oh,
sure. The What I realized, what was missing was me.
yes.
And I went on a journey to then, okay, how do I find me? And I signed up for all these programs. All these great people were coming in my life. I signed up for these programs. And one of the programs I signed up for was called an illumination intensive. And I didn't know what it was about. I just signed up for it because somebody said, this would be really good for you, Vince. And I was just believing everybody. I said, something comes up, I'm going to try it until I find out
Cool.
if it's for me or not. So I'm supposed to go to this illumination intensive, and I get a call from Mary, and we had just started dating, and we had been friends, drinking buddies for like 18 months before we finally figured out we're supposed to be together. So let's just get past all of this. Well, we finally started dating, and she called up and she said, I'm up here in Aspen. Could you come up? And I said, I'm leaving for Vancouver tomorrow for 5 days. I don't know. And she said, I think you really need to come up. So I followed her intuition, and
Yeah.
I went up there. And long story short, we had margaritas. We ended up going to bed together. And she said to me, I see this woman standing next to you, and this is how she's dressed. And it was like, oh my God, you just described my grandmother.
Wow.
And Mary never, my grandmother died when I was 17. That's a whole nother story.
Wow.
But my grandmother died when I was 17. So Mary never saw a picture of her. Mary, she never knew, but she described her exactly. Well, I had had enough margaritas that I was willing to accept.
Ah, interesting.
And then she said, I see this little blonde girl standing next to you. And she described this little blonde girl, about 5 years old, blonde hair, blue dress, white lacy shirt, bobby socks, the whole thing. She described this little girl. And once again, it was like, it was interesting. Tell me more about it. Who is this little girl? I don't know. And then we ended up falling asleep. I got up early in the morning, got on the airplane, went to Vancouver to this intensive. I get there, I find out for the next 5 days from 6 in the morning till midnight, I'm going to sit 10 inches away from somebody, knee to knee in a diad, and answer the question, tell me who you are. For 5 days, 18 hours. Not what I signed up for, but it was probably one of the biggest moments of my life.
Okay.
But during those 5 days, 5 times someone said to me, do you know there's a little blonde girl energy with you?
Oh my gosh.
And described that little blonde girl's energy or what she was wearing. And it was just like you said, oh my gosh. And that's not the words that went over my head, but
Mhm.
I have to pay attention to this. There's something here. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't make this up. I know Mary didn't call these 5 people and say, tell Vince she
Yeah.
found a little blonde
Right.
girl.
Yeah.
So at the end of events like that, as I'm sure you know, they've opened your heart up over 5 days. They spend an hour or 2 hours closing your heart back down so you don't go out into the world so wide open and not know how to deal with it. I didn't go. I went to the airport. I got on an airplane. I flew home. On the way, I called Mary and said, I need to know about this little blonde girl. I get back home and Mary comes over as soon as she could. We have this discussion. And during the discussion, she said, I heard about this little blonde girl in a channeling.
Mm.
And it's like, what's channeling? And she said, well, that's when somebody lets the energies come through them and you're able to talk to them or you get information from them. And I said, like a crystal ball? She said, no, not like a crystal ball. But I was still in that place that I want to know about this channeling. I finally found out the little blonde girl in the channeling, Mary was told that she was going to meet a man and together they would bring in the divine feminine energy.
The blonde girl. Yes.
She thought, and then I thought at that moment that we were supposed to have this little girl.
Oh,
But
okay.
we didn't have the little girl, but we've found that we're bringing in the divine feminine and bringing it
Got it.
together with the divine masculine. So I said, I want to go to the channel. So she sets this channeling up for me. And I'll try to make this quick because I know that
I
I've
have
told so many long stories.
no,
But
no, no. I'm interested and I don't I'm not in a rush, so it's okay. Mhm.
so she sets this channeling up, and her and her mom and I go to this channeling, and me go to this channeling. And we meet this lady, and she's a little strange, um, but a very nice lady. I'm ready to get started with this channeling because I'm not sure what it is and I'm feeling really uncomfortable. And she, no, let's sit down and have some tea. And we got to know each other and everything. And she finally says, let's go back and I'll channel for you. She said, there's 3 ways I can channel. You choose which way you want. I can completely get out of the way and you'll be talking to the energy through me. Or I can you can ask questions and what I get answer wise, I will give you. Or I can ask them the questions and give you the answers that come. And I'm here for a channeling and I don't really believe in any of it. So let's go all the way.
Okay.
So we sit down and she gets us all comfortable and she says, okay, I'm going to go in and get him. All of a sudden the room gets kind of dark. And I just justified, oh, I saw the clouds coming over the mountains and they moved over the skylight and that made the room dark. So justify started right there. Then I watched as her facial features changed some. I mean, just very minutely, but
Yeah.
there was some change and her posture changed. And then she started to talk and it was a deeper, raspy voice and I'm justified. Oh man, she's a really good actress. This is really cool. And the energy introduced itself as Archangel Michael. and said, young man, we've been waiting to talk to you for a long time, and just started explaining things that happened in my life and why. So I'm listening and I'm not asking many questions. I'm just listening to everything that's coming. But everything that comes in, I justify. Well, your brother. Oh, Mary told her about my brother. So I
Mm.
was still constantly justifying all the way through it. And then Michael got to a place and said, someone else wants to talk to you. Are you willing to talk to another energy? And I said, sure, it's here. So I watched her kind of morph again.
Mm.
And it's like, whoa, she's a really good actress. And the next energy was much more playful, very active, and her posture looked that way. And that energy said, I'm Archangel Raphael, and I'm here to help you open your heart because you're here to help others do the same. But you have to open yours first. And then Raphael said, and I'm going to do it with red haired, blue eyed people. And I said, in my mind, oh, Mary told Aloria, the lady who's doing the channeling, that her oldest son is red haired, blue eyed. And there had been like 3 or 4 people in the last month and a half come into my life that were red haired and blue eyed people. And then he said, as an example, do you remember walking through Walmart last week and a little boy stood up in his stroller and was watching you and couldn't take his eyes off you, and he fell out of his stroller and his mom caught him just before he hit the floor? Raphael said that little boy had red hair and blue eyes. And that was my holy shit moment.
Holy shoes. Yeah.
Vince, you better pay attention. Nobody told anybody anything. This is for real. Even if you don't believe it at all, you have to believe it because of this. And then the rest of probably maybe another hour of channeling was a couple other energies. And at the end, Archangel Michael came back in and said, you know why you're here. You told your grandmother why you're here. And you are going to start getting information at night. And we want you to take that information and put programs together and help people live the reason that they're here on earth. So you're going to see, you're going to wake up and you're going to hear information coming in. We want you to close your eyes, look up. If it's blue, it's me, Archangel Michael. If it's green, it's Archangel Raphael. If it's yellow, it's Ra, the sun god. And if it's red, it's a female energy that we don't want to identify at this time.
Wow.
And it started within a week and it never stopped until I downloaded all the stuff for our programs.
Wow.
So about a year and a half into this, I was flying out of Los Angeles and flying all-nighters. And Mary said, Vince, you cannot wake up for a couple hours at night and then go fly an airplane later that night. You just can't do it. And she said, you need to try to channel. And I said, no, not going to happen. She said, all you got to do is let the information come through. I'll take notes or whatever. We can do it during the day and everything will be good. And I said, no, I won't do it. Took her a year to finally convince me to try to let the energy come through. And finally I tried and it came through. She was able to take notes. She was able to ask questions. Archangel Michael was the energy that came through to begin with. And then she started on, well, when are you going to channel for someone else? And it took her another year and a half. And one of the most important mentors in my life, who had 7 of us sitting there in front of her, and Mary and I were 2 of them. And she said to us, when are you going to be completely authentic in your business? And I realized right then, she probably didn't mean it. But to me, she was saying, when are you going to start sharing the channeling? It's one of your gifts.
Yeah.
So when are you going to start sharing it? So I channeled for that group that very moment,
Hmm.
and started on the process of letting the energies come through. But it was a scary thing for me. I
Sure.
mean, I'm an airline pilot. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Last night I was talking to Archangel Michael, and you know,
Did you did you
no,
do
I
it on
didn't.
you didn't?
No,
Okay, you're
I
kidding.
wouldn't do
Right.
that. But can
Yeah,
you
right.
imagine what would
No.
happen?
Yes.
And
Right.
can you imagine what, at least in that moment, from my fear, what my peers would think?
Yes. Yes.
I'm sure there's still some of them that I just think I haven't heard from, and they just won't talk to me. I'm sure that's
Yeah.
probably happened. But Ellison, I couldn't deny it.
Yeah.
I
Right.
couldn't deny it. It happened in the channeling. It happened with that little blonde haired girl. It happened with the information coming in and me seeing the colors in my head. I
Mm.
just had to start paying attention. I mean, it was what I was here to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So like when you're doing, what is it like for you now when you when you meet with someone? I don't know how you do it, but is that how like you meet with people and do that?
Well, I've done personal channelings on Zoom. Mary and I give a free channeling every month,
Hmm.
the third Monday of the month.
Hmm.
Um, here's something that's really amazing about showing you how everything that happens in our lives is taking us towards our purpose. So I truly get out of the way and let the information come through. And they use my mouth, they use my words, but I don't remember even what happens most of the time. I don't remember the words. I have to listen. But the reason I say that is I learned to compartmentalize so much by shutting the cockpit door,
Ah,
that I
yes.
can shut the cockpit door and keep my mind out of the channeling.
So you just picture that? You just like,
Well, I have a process that I go through now that's called coning, that I learned from Michelle Small Wright, it
mhm,
the lady that owned Paralandra. And I picture myself connecting with the energies,
mm,
and I just feel my vibration shift as I connect.
yeah,
And then when I shift it to a certain point, then I just release. But I don't picture closing the cockpit door, but that's exactly how it feels.
yeah,
Everything on the outside doesn't matter anymore.
mm,
You're in the
got it,
cockpit.
got it. Yeah,
It just kind of flows through.
yeah. It's like so similar. Yeah, that's something that you guys do the third Monday. What is that exactly that you do?
So
Like,
we truly believe in community,
yeah,
surrounding yourself with like-minded, like-hearted people that
hmm,
are willing to support you vibrationally, but not support you by coming down to the lower vibration that you might be in, holding their
yeah.
vibration. So in building the community, we truly have a community call. So at 6:30 Mountain Time on the third Monday, people come in, they've signed up, so we know they're there. They put their questions in. The roundtable comes in. They call themselves a roundtable because they wanted us to know that as energies were equal, they're just at a different vibration. And they share an intro, which usually lasts 10 to 20 minutes. And then they allow people to ask questions and then teach the entire group through the questions that people
Oh yeah,
ask.
that's cool. That's cool. Sounds fantastic. So, so when we're having all this conversation, like what comes up for you? Because I'm sure just intuitively, you kind of just know what you want, like things you want to say. I don't want it to just be led by me. You know what I mean? Like me asking questions. Like what is like what's coming to your mind now, like about what you just feel like you want to say to people here? Because
Well, I
there's going to be
wanted,
people here who are Christians who are just completely like, that's blasphemy. Like, you know, if it's not Jesus Christ, like, I mean, that's real, like that, right? So I'm curious, like, what's in your heart to say?
well, that kind of changed
I totally
what
changed it. I'm
was
so
coming up
sorry.
through. But
Yes.
what I want to say, first of all, is this isn't about religion, and
Yeah.
it's not about Jesus. And because I am religious,
Yeah.
I grew up Catholic.
Yeah. Hmm.
I believe in, obviously, angels. I believe in the saints. I
Yes.
believe in Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Um, I believe what the Bible says, that Jesus said that whatever he did, we can do. And I think that the higher vibrations, I don't necessarily, I'm learning more and more that we give a name to a certain dimension vibration of a stream of energy. And I might give that name Archangel Michael, just because it's something that's in my brain and my brain is willing to accept. But we have this connection to the knowingness of the universe. And it wouldn't be there if we couldn't use it.
Yes, I love it.
So I believe each and every one of us can find our way to tap into our guidance in a way that supports us. And we teach 4 or 5 different ways, because I don't think one way is the same for everyone. Not everybody is going to channel the way I do, because that's not part of your purpose on earth. But you are going to channel that guidance in some way. Most of our movies are channeled.
Oh yeah.
A lot of our music's channeled. I
Yes.
mean, things are being channeled all the time. We just don't realize that we're tapping into the higher frequencies of us
Yes.
in this experience. So I want everybody to know that you can tap into your guidance. And tapping into your guidance, you can find your answers, because we are all unique. We're all special. There's nobody like us in this world. And we can't live our lives by other people's rules and answers. We have to learn how to find our own
Yes.
and live that journey. And that doesn't mean you don't follow the rules of the law. You don't, you're not a person that goes out and does whatever he wants to do. You still have the laws to follow, but you chose the laws by choosing where you're living right now.
Mm,
You chose the laws by who you were born to.
mm.
So it's realizing that we're special and unique. We have to find our own answers and step fully into it. I believe that we all knew the difference that we were meant to make before we came to Earth. And uncovering those 3 parts of your purpose will help you see that difference, and it will help you understand why you've done everything that you've done. Even being a bartender and a waitress has to come into the work you're doing,
Yes.
living your purpose, or you wouldn't have done it.
Yep.
You really wouldn't have done it. So to understand that it's there for you, and everybody has a purpose. Everybody can find it. Everybody can tap into their guidance, and it's going to take each and every one of us living our purpose to fulfill putting our piece in the puzzle, so someone else can learn their purpose and start putting their piece in the puzzle.
The reason I love what you said. Thank you. It's fantastic. The reason that I even brought that up about religion, I had there was a reason behind it, because I know that I feel like that's part of, a big transformation for me too, because, I grew up as a Christian, and in the church forever. And, and it was such a incredible, like a conflictual thing for me to be learning more and more about quantum physics, about, this kind of broader spectrum, the science and the spirituality. And I knew I was part of it was to marry the two and to make them make sense. But if there was like that part inside of me is like, oh my God, like, I'm going to hell, like that fear, like that thing, just like that conflict between that whole. But I believe that, and what I learned in the church, and I knew since I was a very small child, like very little, I always knew in advance before someone would die. I knew. I would wake up and know that my rabbit was dead and it wasn't sick. I would, I knew that somebody was going to leave a hospital with it, without their baby. And my pastor's, that's what happened to him and his wife. Like and then there was just this just knowing that I always had. And so I would just see something and I'd know it without any other knowledge. Right. So I always knew that. But then, and this, I think is such a big thing, is that we attach a word to something. So now if I call it prophetic, that's accepted. right?
Mhm.
If we call it channeling, it could be, now, if this was 10 years ago, that would be blasphemy, maybe for me. I don't know. Maybe not 10, maybe a little longer. But you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
so it's like, it's just the language or the meaning that we're, but I love what you said, that there's this just knowing. And are you tapping into it or not? Right? That
Mhm.
kind of thing.
Right.
I feel like I could talk to you forever. I want you to
You know,
channel me.
one of the things that you said earlier,
Mhm.
Allison, that is so
Yes.
important is you said, well, that's their truth.
Mhm.
And I want to challenge everybody that everybody has their truths and they don't have to be the same as yours. And spiritually, we're supposed to accept everybody, but science says there are no rights or wrongs. There just
Mhm.
is. Quantum physics says there just is. So if there's no rights or wrong, think how more peaceful we could be inside of ourselves if we could just allow ourselves to have our truths and others to have their truths without trying to prove each other's truths so we didn't feel we were wrong.
You know what's interesting to me? Tell me what you think, because this is just so such a big thing to me. Because I believe in, I took out of my vocabulary many years ago right and wrong, that whole thing. And when I decided not to feel bad about being wrong, and I still go back, believe me, but like a lot, but the just like to accept, you know, but what I have found in that is that it's made me a better person. I mean, it's made me a more loving person when I'm not scrutinizing right or wrong, right? I'm not. So it's like this weird, like it's almost like I feel like when we're our best or highest self, we show up, we generously, we love, we're confident, we want to give, all we want to do is love, that's it. But when we're in our worst self, whatever, we call it, what, I mean, you probably don't like the word worst, but you know what I mean, like when we show
Mhm.
up and we're irritable, or all of those things, like people might say that's your real self. I don't think it is. I think our real self, if we're in our real self, we don't have to be afraid of the truths of real selves. Does that make sense? Because the
Certainly does.
truths are good, right? Do you know what I
And
mean?
yeah, I want to say that just look at religion or look at quantum physics. Vibration is pure and resonant.
Mhm.
It's the chaos that comes in that pulls the vibration down to frustration, to judgment,
Yes,
to
yes,
despair. So I would say the real you is the high vibrational you.
yes.
And I want to throw out to people to just think of it this way. Our true purpose as 3D beings in the energetic scale is to experience the highs and lows of our vibrational stream so we can expand it.
Mm, yes,
So we have to go through the low vibrations. We have to experience the high vibrations to fully experience that stream and then expand it. The round table says you are the leading edge of universal growth. If you're not on earth, if you're not experiencing the highs and lows, you're not expanding universal energy.
makes sense. Hmm.
Maybe that's why God created us, the creator of the creators, to help expand the universal energy.
Mm.
Boom.
Bam. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's a wrap, I guess. That was just okay. So tell us tell us about your book. Tell us about where people can find you. Tell us about everything that they can gleam off of your genius.
Well, you can find us at imaginemiracles.com or themiraclelifemethod.com, all one word. And that will give you an idea of who we are, why we're together. I think the most exciting way to reach out and learn more about us and what we're doing is truly going to Awakening Through Moments of Choice. You can get it on Amazon. It's not quite out in the audio version yet. I'm working on that, but it's getting close. but Awakening Through Moments of Choice is available because the people that are being drawn to this conversation right now must need the or it's going to be helpful for them to get the, oh my god, this guy was a military pilot, a football player, and he's talking this stuff. So either he's really wacky or there's something that I need to know through this. And the book will help you through that journey. It tells the story of me being the man's man. It tells the story about the awakening and what's happening, but it's not a, a memoir. Although it says a divine memoir, it does tell the stories, but it also gives the background of what you need to know because of the story,
Yeah. Yeah.
where purpose comes into it, how to understand the energy of it. So there's all kinds of information through it. And then the back of the book, there's a free session to talk with Mary and I if you want it. There's opportunities to join us in the free channelings. So there's all kinds of information there. But I'm also going to do, how about I do imaginemiracles.com/mission awake, one word, mission awake. And I'll make all kinds of free stuff available to everybody.
You are the coolest ever.
Well, thank you.
You know what? Selfishly or whatever it is, I want the stuff. I'm gonna mission
You
away.
can you
I'm
can
gonna get
have
in
it
there.
too.
I want to get channeled. I do. All right. So, is there any last words you would want to say to anybody here that just somebody who's just like, wow, I don't even know what they're talking about? Because this is going to be that, people, I mean, I have no idea.
There,
Yeah.
you are special and you are unique.
Yes.
You're here on this world, you're here on this planet for a reason. You're here to make a difference. You're here to have an impact. And don't let anybody or anything tell you different. And you can find your reason.
I love that. I second that. That is so true. Isn't that what we're here to say?
That's what we're here to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. All right. Thank you so much for being on this show. You are an incredible man, teacher, inspiration, all that shenanigans. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to be here. Really, a lot.
Thanks for asking me. I loved being here.
Thank you. It's a wrap.